Hi everyone, I've shared this link before, the EU Council Framework Decision of 13th of June 2002 on combating terrorism, and it explains here exactly what terrorism is and gives all kinds of examples of what terrorist offences are. So, seriously destabilising or destroying the fundamental political, constitutional, economic or social structures of a country or an international organisation. That includes things like attacks on a person's life which may cause death, attacks on physical integrity of a person. It includes selling weapons to other terrorist organisations, aiding and abetting acts of terrorism or war crimes, as this Tory government has done with Saudi Arabia, basically facilitating, enabling Saudi Arabia to commit acts of terror, war crimes against the people of Yemen. Okay? And now the UK government has been found guilty by the Court of Appeal that yes, they have been for aiding and abetting terrorism and actually profiting from it as well. Actually profiting from it. Even it explains in here, as I say, I'll leave you the link, go through it yourself. But even the threat, even to issue a threat of committing any of these offences is itself an act of terrorism. So David Cameron got up and has repeatedly threatened from the very moment he got into office to scrap our human rights. Do you see these human rights that are the foundation of EU membership? Now, the moment that David Cameron threatened, to scrap our human rights, the BBC called it a pledge and a promise. He's pledged and promised to scrap our human rights. It wasn't a pledge and a promise. It isn't a pledge and a promise to scrap your human rights. It's a threat. And I have that sore point with the EU, that why they didn't immediately call David Cameron up on charges of threats to commit crimes against the EU citizens of Britain. Because that was a crime just for him to even suggest scrapping our human rights, and to replace them with a Bill of Rights devised by the Tories that nobody knows anything about, devised solely by the Tories. Because apparently winning an election within a British democracy, it actually means that you get to be played supreme emperor for the day, and you can do what you like. You can impose austerity as an economic weapon, an act of terrorism, and murder 120,000 British citizens, and nobody's going to bat an eyelid about it. Instead, they're all going to get hooked on xenophobic madness. They have fundamentally destroyed our society, this Tory government. It's been attack, attacks against our rights. They hope by leaving the EU now to scrap all of the rights, the vast majority of which we'd already attained before we even entered the EU. So, this has been shown a lot now on the alternative and mainstream medias, which is a YouGov poll of 900 Tory members found that 63% of those surveyed would prefer Brexit to go ahead, even if it caused Scottish independence. So, which do you prefer? Brexit or losing Scotland? 63% would prefer losing Scotland. Okay, we prefer Brexit. We'll ditch Scotland. Significant damage to the UK economy. 61%. Yeah, we're quite prepared to cause significant damage to the UK economy. Don't forget, this is an economy already crippled with austerity after bailing out the corrupt criminal bankers, most of whom are the biggest Tory funders and supporters, who the Tory party serve. London City, that's who the Tory party serve. London City. Nobody else, really. Okay? London City. They're quite happy to cause significant damage to an already damaged economy. in order to get Brexit. Which would you prefer, Brexit or ditching Northern Ireland? Yeah, well, actually, let's ditch Northern Ireland if it gets us Brexit. The Conservative Party being destroyed. Yeah. So what? As long as we get Brexit. Okay? Because what is the Conservative Party? It's just a vehicle. It's a vehicle that they've been employing, a vehicle of power that they've been employing and has been there since post-World War II, precisely to attack and destroy and erase everything that the people of World War II, post-World War II, finally won as our rights after 2 world wars and centuries in which 80% of the population lived in varying levels of poverty, either below the poverty line, on the poverty line, or slightly above it. Jeremy Corbyn becoming Prime Minister. 51%, yeah, even if it means Jeremy Corbyn comes Prime Minister, we would prefer Brexit. Because at the end of the day, yeah, let Jeremy Corbyn come in and deal with the madness and mayhem that will ensue when significant damage to the UK economy is caused. When there's no food on the supermarket shelves, when people can't get the medicines, when prices have quadrupled, okay, and there's mass riots, mass social unrest. Yeah, we'll leave Jeremy Corbyn to do all that. He can get the riot police out and train the water cannon on the crowds, who will then thoroughly hate him, and then it will be Tories forever in their Victorian Britain paradise, because that's what the Tory party has been on at since Thatcher. Get back to Victorian Britain. Let's forget the progressions, the social progressions that have took place. And after we suffered the horror of 2 world wars. And centuries of oppression with no human rights. Yeah, let's get back to that. And that's all they're bothered about. And why do they want Brexit so badly? Why do these rich people, Tory party members who do tend to be far wealthier and more affluent and generally more educated, apparently, than the vast majority of British people? Yeah. What are they so keen to have Brexit for? Well, I've already explained it, and I'll leave the links again under here. It's all about the EU legislations against tax havens and against tax breaks. Because the EU is quite rightfully saying, look, all you corporations and businesses operating within the EU, you're earning your profits out of the EU, but you're not paying your fair share back into it. Because everybody, the average person, EU citizen of every nation within the EU, are paying their taxes. From their meagre wages, they're paying taxes. But you corporations who call yourself people, apparently, and give yourselves human rights as a person, well, you need to pay your fair share taxes. Never mind fraudulently, usually, funneling and laundering money through the EU in order to go and spirit it away where it just sits doing nothing in your tax haven while the people are suffering ever more degrees of poverty. And how long is it before we're going to have to do another bailout? How many bailouts are going to be needed to support this set of criminals? But the Tories, they're quite happy to leave Britain as what? So basically, if they get their way, if this is what it costs for Brexit, okay, that we end up with Jeremy Corbyn there to oversee the final madness until, put him there for a few years to deal with absolute mayhem, a crumbling economy, a divided Britain. So England and Wales, surrounded by hard borders. Okay, you'll have to get a visa to go and visit your family in Scotland. You'd have to get a visa to go to Ireland, a visa to go to France. A little tiny nation on our own, to do trade with the world, a tiny market. You see, because the EU has trade agreements with a multitude of countries, and that's why we pay in. We pay our bit in, and we get the food, the very, very cheap subsidised food, because we're a huge market and we buy in bulk from these other nations through the EU trade agreement with those nations. We pay our share of the world trade tariffs, and it's all vastly reduced because it's a huge market. Because if you buy in bulk, you get it much, much cheaper, don't you? Whereas if you're just a little tiny market, well, you're not going to be able to buy in bulk. So, because you're not the EU, you're just England and Wales. So I expect your medicines to go up, what? 10 times. 10 times what they are now. Expect that. Expect your food to go up at 5 times more, and it's going to be poisonous food according to EU standards, because apparently that's going to be part of a trade deal with America for our food and medicines, is that we abandon the EU safety regulations for our food. So that's okay, innit? Poison the population with toxic foodstuffs. Destroy our NHS. Destroy our NHS. That's a threat against people's lives when you destroy their healthcare system. I am telling you now, they are guilty of terrorism. This is a terrorist, lawless government, and it is beholden now upon the professional people of Britain who have a sense and a sanity and a care and compassion, and for the MPs, the professional people, to get up off your backsides, and you are going to have to arrest members of Parliament. You're going to have to arrest these Tory ministers that have overseen all this, because we are talking about a plot. Okay? Brexit is a terrorist plot. David Cameron threatened Brexit, threatened leaving the EU, because he could not persuade the EU to allow Britain to step outside of these new legislations for banking and tax. That's what it was all about. He wanted a special clause. He wanted to do a new deal with the EU, really, so that Britain, London City, could be exempt from these legislations. And when they refused, that's when he started threatening to leave the EU. But why were the EU even talking to a man who's threatened to scrap British citizens' human rights? EU citizens. Why were EU Parliament even talking to him? Now, it is looking seriously bad when this is the result of a YouGov poll. That's an official poll, a trustworthy poll. When this is the result, we've got it straight from the horse's mouth here. And we can see by their actions what they've done. They've murdered 120,000 British citizens. That's the official figure. How many more have to die? Because they don't care. They don't care. They don't care about us. They don't care about Britain. All they care about is the sovereignty of London City, which is a separate state within Britain. Understand it. That's not a conspiracy theory. That's a conspiracy fact. London is a separate state. Anybody who voted Brexit, you're not voting for British sovereignty. You voted for sovereignty for the City of London, for them to carry on committing their fraud, theft and crimes, their banking crimes and tax evasions. That's who you voted for. Okay? Oh, and by the way, if you thought you were stopping immigration, sorry, you need to think again, because the corporations can bring in as many people as they like from abroad, from any country in the world, to work here. There's global corporate law firms there to sort it all out for them. The only restriction is that they have to pay their corporate immigrant employees at least $30,000 a year. Oh, that's nice, isn't it? So all the crappy under $30,000 a year jobs, they'll go to the British natives, won't they? Except we won't be British, will we? We'll be England and Wales. We'll be England and Wales. The Tories are quite happy. As long as London City's safe, as long as London City can then set itself up as a tax haven, so Britain can become a tax haven. Well, you go and have a look at all the places where these tax havens are. Oh yeah, the rich are living it up big, and the people on the ground are living in abject poverty. And they have no rights. Yes. That's what they want, and they're happy. As long as, because all they believe in, they've got no faith, you see. You're talking about a godless consciousness. They have no faith. They have no faith in their humanity. They don't even know what a human being is. They've got no connection to us, the understanding, the notion of a soul, of our quantum light, eternal, universal being that is within all of us. They believe in nothing except their money. Gold is their God. Physical gold is their God. Not golden light universal intelligence that created us. Not the golden light universal intelligence that constitutes our spirit and soul. No, because actually we don't have a spirit and soul, do we? So shall we just demolish the Church of England then? Because it's all built on a fiction and a fantasy. Jesus was just telling a pack of lies. Of course we don't have a soul. Of course there's no afterlife. We're born, we die, and that's it. So, you might as well get as rich as you can, stamp as many people as you can. Who cares if you have to sacrifice 1,000,000 jobs as long as you get your Brexit? This is madness. This is madness. Okay? Fascism is not a political choice. It explains here very clearly, doesn't it, what constitutes a democracy. A democracy does not give room for fascism. Fascism is not a political choice. It's a crime. Anybody spouting fascist rhetoric, we're all free to speak and express ourselves freely, and we are free equally to speak and express ourselves freely when people come out with fascist rhetoric. And we expect a BBC that's being funded by public money to turn around and hold all these fascist extremists to account, not present them before us as a political choice. Fascism is not a political choice, it's a threat. And British citizens have died. Why? Because they're Muslim, or because they're an immigrant, or because they're a person of colour, or because they're gay. People are being attacked because this xenophobic madness has been allowed to run rampant under rule of a fascist terrorist government, and that is what they are. And like I say, it is up to you now, you MPs of Britain who call yourself MPs, you believe you're there representing the British people, well, you're going to have to do it. You're going to have to stand up and walk out of Parliament, because I tell you now, I for one, I'm going to be out on the streets banging my pots and pans if we don't get an election. We need a general election. Never mind Boris Johnson or whoever the Tories now want to set up, because Theresa May, people voted, the whole of Parliament gave a vote of no confidence in her. But she's allowed to stay, and the Tories, because she represents the Tories. If Parliament's saying they've got no confidence in Theresa May, then even the Tories themselves, this whole Tory government, have we, the public, got any confidence? Have we got confidence in a government that this is what their members support? This is what their members... Have we got confidence in them to guarantee our children's future? Even to threaten our health service, our NHS, that's a threat of murder. To become, what? England and Wales. They are prepared for us to become England and Wales, surrounded by hard borders. A tiny market. There, with no deal set up yet with any country apart from America, but we're going to hand them our NHS. I tell you now, this is terrorism. Because terrorism, it isn't just using... People think of a terrorist, a guy there with a bomb in a rucksack or something. As the saying goes, there's more than one way to skin a cat. But the end result is the same, okay? So we are going to have to stop this. We need to stand up as a nation. We need to stand up. People from all walks of life, we need to get out and do in Iceland, you see. Not rioting. Anybody who starts rioting, damaging property, know them for what they are. Agent provocateurs. That is what they are. okay, in order to justify water cannon and rubber bullets. But no, we stand firm. We stand firm like the people of Iceland. They stood in minus freezing temperatures to say no, we're not bailing out the banks, and that's what we should have done as a nation. But we didn't, and instead this Tory government have wheedled the way in, except they're not a Tory government, they are a set of evil fascist terrorists that want to take us back to Victorian Britain. That's what the Tory party is for. It's just a vehicle to finally trash everything the people of post-World War II had managed to achieve by way of social and human progress. They're finally going to trash it and move us all back into Victorian Britain, aren't we? Except, you know, it won't be the workhouse, will it? It'll be the factory prison. We can't allow it. We cannot allow it. We need to stand up for our history. Just like all these Tory toffs stand up for their history, you know, Eton and the royal family. Oh yeah, you know, because our that's our heritage. That's our historical heritage. It's ours by right because I was born into a royal family. I'm a prince. Okay then, well I've got my rights as well. That because I was born into a family that my grandfather had died in the war. My great uncle died in World War One. That my ancestors fought and suffered for this country for centuries. Suffered oppression, economic misery, hell actually. That's my heritage, to have my rights that they won, that they paid for. With their bravery, their courage, their blood, their sweat, their tears. That's our heritage, and you are not going to take it away. And you are not going to deny us again. And never again shall this country, shall it be even permissible that any political party, a winning political party, can just come in and fundamentally to implement such changes that actually destroy people's lives, that to implement an economic policy that they know kills people, and they knew it was killing people, and they're killing people even now with their rollout of universal credit, leaving people for months on end with no money, families facing homelessness, people having the children taken off them because they're falling victim to depression, and suddenly in come the privatised social services. Oh, you're a future emotional risk to your child. And they get paid £1,800 a week for every child on their books. Oh, but no money for the impoverished parent. That is actually deemed a future emotional risk precisely because they've been pushed into poverty through austerity. Oh, but the government's got £1,800 a week to give to privatised social services. This is madness. It is madness, madness, madness. And that's why, you know, people like Jeremy Corbyn need to stand up straight and firm and to end this. We need to cancel this Brexit. We need to arrest these Tory criminals. We need to arrest them. All of them. They need to go to jail. Because we're talking about a parliament that can sit there quite happily knowing that the poorest and destitute amongst their constituencies, the victims of austerity, are being fined and imprisoned for begging on the street, for being so starving they're forced to steal a Toblerone. Right? They're quite happy. They will sit there, carry on scoffing at the trough. But this government has committed such great, terrible crimes that are defined by the EU as terrorist acts. And they have done nothing. They've done nothing. So, you know, whatever happens to this country, on your heads be it, every single member of parliament sitting in there today, if you do not walk out and demand a general election right now, this minute, and no way are we going to have another Tory criminal terrorist negotiating Brexit, and especially not Boris Johnson, who basically what, you know, He's a liar. Hangs around with bloody crack addicts, probably a cocaine addict himself. Cameron before him and George Osborne. Cameron with his paedophile senior advisor and George Osborne running our economy. And his senior advisor was actually filmed in a crack den. This is the madness that is leading us. And they get away with it. Oh, because they're superior. They're superior. You know, they were educated at Eton. And they come from very good families. What is a very good family? Do you know to me what a very good family is? Is the average working hard family trying to raise the next generation in this country. Is a very good family. And I don't care which way they were persuaded to vote, if they voted Brexit or if they voted to stay. I stand up for their rights and their children's rights, because I know that they've been duped by a set of terrorist criminals. And it is... I will vote for nobody that supports this, that refuses, that has refused and failed to confront the level of crime and horror, the horror that I have had to witness in my country. I never thought that it could ever get as bad as this. I mean, gosh, people told me I was being over the top. My goodness, it's 10 times worse than I could ever have imagined. And even what is actually worse is that it's been tolerated, that people have just quietly accepted it all. No. Stand up for your rights, people. Members of Parliament, you better stand up for the British people and the next generation. Because, you know, Britain's youth, and this is a quote, are terrified.